I have a map for you. Third, yeah, third.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Tuesday afternoon Commissioners Conference. We're going to start out with an executive session because we got a guest here. So how long do you think, Jessica?
15.
Okay, so we're going to pop in and try to take care of that business right at the very first, okay?
The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 1:51. The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 1:56. The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 2:01.
Okay, thank you for your patience. Came out of executive session, no decisions were made. I do understand we have a request from HR.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jessica Warren, Human Resources. I have a request to fill from the Office of Public Defense. One of their attorneys has put in his resignation. This would be a regular level public defense attorney, so they would like to fill this position.
Okay, by me.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public Works, Building and Planning. Which one wants to go? We have 2 tables if you need it. Okay.
Guys.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tracy Jackson, Building and Planning. So we wanted to bring forward, just kind of have some discussion items with the board. Some of your audience that was talking, questioning, wondering why sometimes we not question a stamp, but kind of our process is what we're looking for and where we're heading. And so I just wanted to open it up to the board and staff here and just have a open discussion about why it's important for our staff to review some of the stuff that's submitted.
If I might, I don't recall that question.
I think, the gentleman that usually sits in the front, Ron had posed the question
Okay.
about, and we had talked several times in our joint group that we meet with them weekly. We just thought it would be just a good discussion to have with the board so that you can reiterate to your citizens kind of what we look for and why and the importance of it.
Okay, maybe ancillarily this morning, someone was asking about IBC, UBC, ABC, no.
Yeah, yes, pretty much.
And which one prevailed and why? Do you remember anything about that?
I think Mr. Kaiser was referring to
Yeah.
about if we were going to adopt the state new building codes. We don't have to, however, we have to post the codes that the state does adopt. So we usually.
So could you flesh that out? So by fleshing that, I mean, you've got the IBC, and then you've got the state saying a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, it's the state International Code Council, the ICC.
Okay, are we obliged to abide by all of the above? What do we do if conflict and, yeah, okay.
Okay, the state of Washington has decided to adopt a model code. They use the ICC, the International Codes, for their body of codes. And it's comprised of building, residential, fire, mechanical systems, plumbing systems, accessibility to disabled persons, and of course, energy code. This body of codes is referred to by the State Building Code Council as the Washington State Building Code. And they update these in a periodic manner, typically 3-year cycles. However, that's been instructed periodically over the past 5-6 years. The current code adopted by the state at state level is 2018. State building code. Local jurisdictions are not required to adopt, but they are required.
Could you explain that again very carefully?
Local jurisdictions are not required to adopt, but they are required to enforce. Amendments, adoption of amendments are typically that which is useful for a local jurisdiction. A good example would be the fire code in our jurisdiction, because we lack firefighting infrastructure, as do most rural jurisdictions. So we adopted the Wildland Urban Interface Code 2016 as a way to address the requirement while doing so in a way that serves our. That's a good example of adoption. We are enforcing the fire code, specifically section 507 of the National Fire Code. We're doing it by ways and means that are useful in our
How is the outside world supposed to understand any of this?
That's why we're here.
I don't have to adopt it, but we have to enforce it.
Correct. That's RCW 1927050.
Yeah, there.
Yeah, I understand.
What happens if we don't enforce it? They're gonna haul us all
I
off?
guess you have a conversation with counsel.
No. At some point in time, we best have the conversation because this gets ridiculous.
Yeah, so how would you deal with a rule that's been contemplated that no more natural gas?
That is in current litigation, I believe.
That is what, sorry?
I think currently there's litigation pending regarding that subject.
Yeah, that's not my question. My question is if that were passed by Olympia, you would try to enforce it.
We would be obligated to enforce it. Now, enforcement
problem.
can be in various degrees. We have the personnel to enforce or not, do we not? Likely how this will.
Wait, you don't get by so easily on that one. So I'm trying to build a house and I'm showing you my plans. I'm trying to be completely open with you and I'm showing you I'm putting in a gas range. You're going to tell me no or yes?
I would simply repeat on the plan review what the code requires.
Do I get the permit?
Well, we will always, I mean, I can't think of a time we were not issued a permit. And of course, the permit can be amended through the process of construction. Objective is simply to get there to the finish line and not obstruct the project.
You know what I'm asking.
Oh, I know
Just
what you're asking.
Get straight to it. So do I get my occupancy?
Ultimately,
permit?
you may be denied a certificate of occupancy if the building is found not compliant.
I'm sorry again?
Yes, ultimately, you may be denied a certificate of occupancy if the building does not comply. Now, there's various ways to get there. And I mean, we're talking just hypothetically and not in reality. And right now, what you're speaking is a very contentious point that's currently in litigation. And how that will shake out, I believe, will be the message of the people, because there's quite a storm that's brewing in opposition to what you discussed.
Right, but I was at a meeting many years ago where a citizen was appealing having to put a sprinkler system in his extant house because his plan was to add an upstairs granny flat for his mom, and he was willing to sprinkler or downstairs. He was willing to sprinkle that whole thing, but not revamp the house. And he was asking for the board to grant him a variance. Does the board have that power is one question. And two, would you currently, probably that's for Tracy, would you grant the variance?
Well, what you're speaking to is not necessarily would we even require a variance. We would look for options, solutions that could achieve the requirement of the fire code. What you just discussed. There are ways to get there. I mean, it's very seldom that you're funneled down to the absolute conclusion of you must do this. Pretty rare. I mean, I've seen a couple of cases of that. But it's because of the way they've chosen to develop. We don't tell people how to do things. It's just a matter of here's what the code requires. You want to do this. There's a lot of flexibility for innovation and options available to them. So, if they wanted to build something out in the river, there may be a way to get there. It may be very difficult and expensive, but whether or not it could actually be denied, I don't know. It's beyond my realm. So,
Yeah, we've been assailed frequently with building costs are just super high to meet the newer standards, and as time goes on, the newer standards.
Yeah. They throw all this stuff in and to me, I'm just real simple. If the insurance company wants to insure that house for fire, it's good.
Yeah.
I don't get all this other stuff that you have.
Except the
Yeah.
insurance company is going to, you have to be very careful because the insurance company may insure it, and then when it comes for a claim, say, well, you didn't follow the codes.
Well,
that's very possible.
that's problem with your insurance company then.
Oh, yeah, I think everyone.
We can all agree that the code has and will continue to become increasingly complex. Keep in my office a copy of the 1946 building code. And now the code is this.
Yeah.
The codes began their life cycles as kind of reaction to disasters. I can go back to Chicago fire, San Francisco, 1906, on and on and on. Each of these, result in case studies, which then codes, people read upon codes. Now, that's the fundamental reason for them. Now, are they politically influenced and lobbied and to get to where we are today? I would say probably. But it doesn't put us in the position to say yay or nay. It's just at our level, Olympia tells us what the code is and we're required to enforce it.
Is that where the overlays come in?
Pardon me?
Is that where a lot of the overlays come in?
The overlays? Yeah, that's not in the building code. Speaking to, I don't know what you mean by the overlays.
Well, as Ron pointed out, you can have an architect and he could build it to code, but we don't always stamp it because we have overlays. Somebody said we had overlays that we attach in some of those that are above and beyond.
Are we talking about plans that are
No,
stamped and
no, he-
signed by a professional?
Yeah, he's saying that you do not accept those without looking them over to make sure that they comply with specific Cowlitz County code. So if I get somebody designing something in Washington State so you will apply Cowlitz County additional requirements on there. I've heard that from you.
Well, we review plans for compliance with ordinance. And it's not that the building itself may be incorrect, but for example, let's go into the fire code. Does it provide for that which is required by the fire code? Is the fire protection water supply available? If not, how do you intend to mitigate that? How do you intend to address the requirement of the fire code? It's not the building itself is not compliant, but there may be other circumstances to support the presence of the building.
I can rephrase that question in the following way, I think. We get these requirements coming down from Olympia, right?
For the building code, correct?
Right, for the building codes. And then we in the county add additional constraints. If you do this, you must do that.
Well,
That's a yes or a no
Yeah.
answer.
they're not constraints. They're amendments to, in our case, to create greater flexibility. The fire code says provide a fire protection water supply. Okay, how am I going to do that way out on Rose Valley Road? It's not reasonable. So we've amended state building code to the extent that we're capable of doing so by adoption of wildland interface code.
So let me ask it like this, May. I come to you with an engineer drawing. It's got the engineer stamp on it. I was told that in addition to that, you would have to look it over to make sure it complied with something specific to Cowlitz County.
Okay, yes, because plans that bear the stamp of an engineer, for instance, you use that as an example. In more cases than not, do not comply with the non-structural provisions. But a good example would be one we had on West Side Highway. It was a facility that consisted of 3 buildings. The engineer is not going to necessarily concern themselves with the non-structural provisions. Their stamp is that for structural, they're going to address it specifically in the International Building Code, which is the beginning place for all structural design. In this case, they did not address at all the code analysis, which is necessary to justify the conclusions of design, for instance, for all non-structural conclusions. Fire resistance being one. The building in this case, or some buildings, were located so close to the property line that fire resistant design was necessary to be integrated with the building. That was not addressed at all. That's a good example. Although those plans were sealed, signed by an engineer, they didn't comply with all the requirements of the building code. So in that case, it just goes back to the designer and say, these are the deficiencies. We don't alter stamp drawings. We're not permitted to do so. We just have to make comments. It's just a collaborative effort between the designer and the reviewing party to get to a conclusion. Sometimes it's just a conversation on the phone. Sometimes it's a letter and saying, you know, detailing about A, B, and C, get these things done, resubmit. Accessibility for disabled persons is another good example. That's
I don't get a
required.
lot of, it's as easy as ABC down there
Well,
when they call me.
when I'm talking about the collaboration or the conversation between the plans examiner and the engineer. Oftentimes they're not aware of these things are required. Oftentimes in our jurisdiction, the engineer just perceives as their one part of this package submittals, not realizing that no one else is picking up the other end. There's not an architect involved, there's some other building is involved. They're just doing the structural.
On these kinds of things, I often ask myself, are we taxing or burdening the 95% for the 5% pathological instances, and what justification do we have for doing that? So like I've got an outbuilding. It's got the engineer stamp on it. I expect to go into your office, look at it, and you say, yeah, it's something or other. I expect to walk out with that permit within half hour from when I actually make it to the desk. Does that happen?
It can.
No, not it can.
Well,
Does it?
the question you're posing, first of all, it is one project or one application in the lineup. Is it correct to put them in advance of some?
See, that's the problem you've got. You're looking at things not from the point of view of a client. You're looking at some operational concept, and that is totally lost on the client. If in fact, within the half hour, you can give the guy the permit, You should do that, right?
If we have the capability of doing so, yes.
It has nothing to do with who else is in line. The guy walked up to the counter and asked for something that was simple, engineer drawing or
Well,
something like that.
we may have three people in that row that are standing in line for the same thing. Who comes first? You know,
I don't have this trouble when I go to the supermarket. I walk up, I stand there and wait till there's a
Well-
cashier that's available.
first of all, I have to look at the documentation, so that means it's gonna be subject to plan review. Just because a document bears a stamp, first thing I'm looking at is the design parameters, whether or not they're correct. Next thing I'm looking at, what is the scope of the design work that the engineer is responsible for? Oftentimes, on a project like you described, they're only going to do the work for which they're hired. And if they believe the only structural component lacking or that is challenging or not conform to the prescriptive code is the lateral resistance factors in the building. That's all they're designing. They're not accounting for gravity loads. So it looks nice. It's a nice drawing. It has a stamp on it, but it's only half done. And you're not going to know that's half done unless you do the review.
Confusing to me. It sounded like the one building you used on the west side, the building wasn't the problem. It was because they wanted to set it too close to the boundary. So and that's telling me, well, the engineer may not know where you're going to set the building, but the building's okay. It's just that they want to set it to this. So then we say, okay, you got to have this fire stuff. I don't know why, because you're close to somebody else, I suppose, or whatever.
Exactly. You put your neighbor in jeopardy.
How many neighborhoods have burned down in the last 67 years that I've been here? I don't remember one.
Well, the code doesn't,
It's like Arn says, we penalize the 95 for the 5%.
I understand,
It's frustrating.
but we must and we're required to operate under the duty of the public welfare. and safety. The welfare. and
The
safety
public can
of-
take care of themselves. You all think the public are stupid and they
Well,
don't know
it's-
what they're doing.
But we
The
have to
public
operate.
is perfectly capable of making, in the most cases, good decisions for themselves. We got homes in here that were built in the 20s.
Mhm.
And they're still standing, they're still operational. I have homes that were built in the 40s. They're still being rented, they're still doing stuff. So this whole nanny state stuff where we got to take care of everybody just drives me insane.
I don't disagree with you, but that is not in our ability to change.
It is in our ability to change if enough people will stand up with some
Well,
backbone.
Oh, I agree, but they have to take it to Olympia. We don't have the authority to change that. Very clear in the RCW, we cannot diminish the level of the code that's provided or adopted by the state.
Get creative.
Mine's not really related to that, but kind of. Since I've been here, I've been doing reviews on the public works side and the board has made it very clear and Mike, I've had discussion about this with Mike as well. We do everything we can to exempt applications, to minimize the impact on our applicants, to try to get the projects as simple as possible. In stormwater, we stand at the counter and help applicants fill out because it was a state mandated thing that we're required to do. But to try to minimize the impacts on our residents, we do as much as we can to try to help minimize that. Sounds from what Mike has been talking, they try to minimize as much, but you know, I just wanted to throw that out there.
I can't recall all the situations that come across to me, but very frequently, they're just like, we're working for the bureaucracy. If bureaucracy works for you, you got something. If you work for it, you've got a problem. We've got a problem.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
is there anything you need from us to help you not be a slave to bureaucracy. When you see a drawing or you see a plan and it looks good to you, but it doesn't conform to something that you think is completely unnecessary to apply, are you going to come and ask us if we can give you a variance? I think I would be happy to sign a paper that
I
says,
would,
I told them not to do this.
I would help you with that beyond belief. I'm not afraid of those people, but I'm not going to be complicit with thumb on the public. Just not going to do it.
No, and I agree with you. We, as Patrick said, we do everything we can to help people through the process because we know it's complex and it's troublesome. And it's a lot of listening and very little talking. But every possible iteration, percent you've heard.
Well, let me give you an example. You and I met with, mine is with Elaine Placido, right? And this was in, a citizen had an issue. He came to me. I looked at it and I said, this is droll. Went over and met you, Elaine, the gentleman, and I. And you waxed on for quite a bit. And it just simply made no sense to me. But nevertheless, you went on. And at the end, you know how that was resolved? Elaine got a piece of paper, the right piece of paper, signed it, and we walked out with what we basically needed. How do we reconcile the fact that the citizen had to come to me in order for me to get something that you say now is illegal or something like that? I'm saying there's a lot of interpretation along the way.
Yeah, and without knowing the circumstances, the details of that one, I really can't comment. But that is what we do on a daily basis, is trying to get them to a conclusion where they get it is they came in for. Get them to yes. You know, like anything
My,
else, it's, you
my
know,
sister-in-law built a garage and it's not completed yet. I shouldn't say anything because I don't want to jinx her. But it has an upstairs apartment. It's just a small little thing.
Yeah.
And you don't know where I live, but I live at the end of the road. She lives next to me I'm about 6 acres. She's around 6 acres. And they were gonna make her put sprinkler systems in that garage unless the 2 fir trees were 10 feet apart at the top. And I'm going, what? And she didn't have to do the sprinkler. She just said, well, they look 10 feet apart to me. You climb up there and see if they are. And that's the kind of stuff that just seems a little bit ridiculous to me. Here's a one big garage with a tiny little apartment on top. And because we live a mile off the road or whatever, she was going to have to put sprinkler systems, but she could get around it as long as the 2 fir trees were 10 feet apart at the top.
The 2 points of perspective that are hard for us to come with is to his sister, in this case, that's a big deal. To you, it's an absolutely nothing. It's you're doing 100 of these a day, and so just check them off. You don't have your heart for them. They have their heart in it. And we have to understand that we may be tired of these things, but it's very important for the client. The other one there is every time somebody has to go to building and planning, come back again, go and back, has to come and talk to me, has to come and talk to him. Those are just inordinate efforts. But make it even more than that is if they know they're correct or something like that, and they actually have to get a lawyer involved to get us to perform. Now, typically, I don't think that involves you, but I'm trying to paint the picture of what we think is a simple thing for a client is not. It's a big deal. And we really should keep that in mind.
I assure you, I never take for granted the resources or the abilities of the applicant,
Appreciate that. Thank you.
because I know that there's real money on the line and invested in that. And that's why we endeavor to do a good job, especially because errors on paper are easily resolved. Once you find them in the field.
Yeah, yeah.
It's expensive.
I don't really have anything.
Thank you.
So maybe it's worth with Patrick talking a little bit. Very lately, we've gotten requests about streets and getting in on, this is for just overall. Okay, the permitting issue and I think roads and access tend to be a different beast. Recently, there was a situation where
We've resolved that and met him this morning.
I beg your pardon?
We met with him this morning
Oh.
and have a resolution moving forward. Hopefully we'll have full resolution by the end of next week.
One that you feel is satisfactory, but you also think that they feel is satisfactory.
Correct. But as a broader topic on that, access and roads are a huge concern. Mostly because as we develop at the end of these 12, 14-foot roads, you know, more and more houses in back there, and the safety concerns for those more and more houses start to become apparent, but it's a lot of money to widen and build up a road to a standard that could be safe. So it is a very big concern. BPAC has brought that forward, as well as the Planning Commission, and Public Works and Planning are working on trying to find a solution for that. I think we're gonna have some to bring forward in the near future, and then more permanent stuff, hopefully in the not too far future out of that. So, but we're very aware of those and the impacts they have on our applicants.
I was at the planning commission meeting and I'll continue to go to those, but I heard that was going to be worked on. I'll tell you, that was one of the very first things I got hit on when I got into office was private roads.
Yep. We've already sat down with Building and Planning, come out with a game plan. And so I know Wayne and Adam are working on some stuff on their end. We're working with them to try to resolve it. So hopefully we'll have something for you that you can present to your constituents.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing this brings in, it's not so much it's his building and planning, and I heard it off of Young Road and I've heard it off of other roads, is the developers, when it's not like Silver Lake Village where they were developing houses and you knew what was going to be in there. They're developing lots, and then they can play games with the lots, and all of a sudden they got more lots, and it's trying to decide at what point does that developer have to put something into roads, even though it's not houses there, there's going to be houses there.
Yep.
But it sounds like they have the ability to lot line adjustments, and I don't know how it all works. I just hear it talked, and how do I don't want to stop them from doing stuff, but I don't, there has to be a point where, hey, this is going to create an impact. You're going to have to address that here at some point in time.
I've always said that I'd rather see a subdivision, a full subdivision anytime over short plats. Short plats do have their purpose, but in an area, if I have multiple lots, there's some backing there that I can ask for some offsite improvements such as Young Road or something like that to help. Whereas a 4-lot short plat, you just don't have the the money behind that, you can't get much money off those lots as you could as a subdivision, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So then as they get built out, then all of a sudden you got a problem
yep,
and we probably get stuck with trying to do something with the road.
yep, yes, so.
I don't have a solution for it. I'm just telling you, it's one of the things I've become aware of that people concerned.
Well, that's the first step, is to become aware of it, so we do appreciate that.
So on the item with the building and planning, it says review principles. I feel like maybe I was complicit in shortchanging what they wish to tell us.
Well, I got the thing that they wanted us to express our concerns. I'm not sure they want to hear them anymore.
Yeah, so I'm confused. I don't know what was to be accomplished at that time.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so it went about like you intended?
Commissioners, we were just trying to address concerns that the board has had, and we've heard the citizens in the audience. We tried to address them as they come up or as items up. I think some of the items that we had talked about, we've been working with, especially like the private roads and surveys come in, why we just didn't review the survey that is stamped. Susan has a fantastic example, Spellhead being in the right of way. Just it's little things like that that they do look at and do look at for consistency, and that they are gonna pass stuff. It's not that we're challenging the stamp or questioning it, it's things that we're looking at because what is being presented, whether it be like outbuilding out somewhere that's too close to the property line or some different wellheads in the survey for a short plat, it does matter. And we do try to not give any hiccups or obstacles to the applicant by no means. That's the last thing we want to do. But to make sure that we have our ducks are in a row, so we make sure that things are done.
Yeah, I think you may, well, maybe we need to separate the class of things, because certainly I would be upset if building and planning gave somebody a permit to build a house 2 feet over on my property. And I would count on you to prevent that from happening. But I think we're talking about just the construction. If I want to build a house out of straw and it burns and falls apart, if it's not for public use, it's my own. We've got regulations now that acknowledge that in part, right? When I can build a barn without too much regulation, I can build is it 100 square feet outbuilding of some kind, or shed without a permit?
And I think it's,
Oh, it's up
200
to
square
200?
feet, 20
I'm
by
gonna
10.
have to add an
200.
addition to my,
Go.
So yes, we had just heard many people in the public saying, well, I'm spending all this money for an engineer. They're signing it, stamping it. Why is another engineer doing it? I don't know. So sending it back and telling them, yeah. So we just wanted to open up, there are reasons we look at it. Have ones where plans come in and it shows the grading of the road outside the easement of the road. And those are the type of things we're looking for, and that is why we want to make sure that what they're saying they're doing makes sense.
yeah. I think that's appropriate for lot boundaries, location on that's and I probably in your shoes wouldn't trust anyone's engineer drawings without checking them. You don't know, a proper engineer would present you something after having checked all kinds of things, but you don't know if they have checked it or not. So I certainly appreciate that. It's more or less the example of your sisters.
yeah. And Ron was the one who first broached that. And he even said that. He said the plans itself should be stamped. He said, didn't you have your reviews on boundaries and all the other things? But he said his complaint was the plans itself should be fine. He gets it, then you need to know that you're within boundaries and you're doing the other stuff, but the plans, he didn't. That was his
That's,
comment.
well, and what Susan was mentioning is almost all of the plans that Susan and I review come in stamped, private roads and whatnot, public roads. And the example she had was the road was here, but his design was way over here, completely offset, not even consistently. And so just because an engineer stamps the plans doesn't mean that they even make sense sometimes.
So I think Ron was mainly talking about buildings.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah. Like, I think I'll repeat, what you do there, preventing putting the building in the wrong place is really pretty important.
Yeah. Even my sister-in-law, it's close to my line. I want to know it's not on my line.
thank you.
So
gentlemen.
how are things going?
Fantastic.
The building permits are up still?
They're maintaining. I don't think they're up. They're maintaining, which is good. Like I said, staff's busy, so.
You issue the occupancy permits,
Mike does.
Mike does?
Mhm.
Yeah. You probably have sent it to me somewhere. How are we doing with occupancy permits? Are they balanced by the incoming requests for permits?
They're pretty much flush. What's going in is coming out.
Since
Oh,
you-
and then just off the, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Nope, since you haven't been at BPAC, a bunch of apartment buildings are starting to come online over the next couple of months, and that's really upping some of the occupancy availability
yeah.
in the area. Lexington has a huge complex that the buildings are being occupied, or the permits are being issued right now.
We have 3 buildings that have been, have occupancy for them and they're being rented.
I remember seeing some numbers, but I don't remember them. How many homes of all kinds, including apartments, gonna come online in the next 3 months? I think it's a big number, isn't
It
it?
is a big number. There's a lot of
Like
apartment buildings.
1,000?
Oh,
You're in that range.
at least. What do you think?
It's in that range? you
He's
think?
calculating it.
It's, I'm gonna say it's close to that if it's not
I
above
want to
it.
say that too.
Yeah.
The Solomon Road's 290 something as it is, so.
Yes. Eye in the sky. Spaghetti on the wall.
So I would agree that it's right around.
Several
1,000.
hundred, yeah.
Yeah. That should make quite a difference in the price of housing,
We can
but
only
I
hope.
don't know what the demand is. As
They
soon as
seem-
that goes online, we'll have other people from elsewhere saying, let's go there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the saying. I would bet the majority of that taken as inflow. You know, last Economic Development Council meeting, they had a gal talking that what they do is study growth trends and stuff. It's part of their job for the state of Washington. And she mentioned Cowles County was at a growth rate of about 1.1%, which was pretty even keel. Clark County had been growing at 26%. The majority of that people of influx coming in. And the expectation for us from here to the year 2030 was 20%. And that'll be people coming in, not transfers of
Yeah.
people already in the community. So quite frankly, 20% growth, I find a little scary. You start putting real pressure on your infrastructure and your roads and all that kind of stuff, and
Yep.
and can be expensive. So we'll see if she's right.
And something to consider is the 1,000 is unurbanized, is outside of city limits too. So I know Longview has a couple of apartment projects. I know Woodland has at least 2 big ones. So that's something to consider as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time today. It's a
Yes.
good discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, I actually think these discussions are good for the public to hear and for us to hear, so. Everything seems so cooked and prepared from the outside but when you see on the inside, we're all struggling.
It's good for them to see we can get frustrated too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
And then I know we have maybe 10 minutes. Anything? Did you have any, I said today, I didn't know if county actually appointed anybody to this boundary review board. Evidently, we have one that we can appoint.
Evidently. Yeah.
And he's been on there 3 terms. I don't know if he wanted to look at it longer.
What's the date on this? Oh, this is recent.
Yeah,
I don't. I don't know what, I don't know what the right thing is.
yeah.
Maybe somebody there can give us advice. Boundary Review Board, do you get involved with any of that at all?
It is out of our. Commissioners, it's out of our department. We don't. We have a boundary review board meeting. I believe they meet monthly, but we don't. Is it a commissioner appointment?
It looks like it would be a commissioner appointment.
It's a very small group. They
Yeah, I
work well
think there's-
together.
We had a question on it because, and I went over it this morning, and there's 5 people on it.
Yeah.
2 are appointed by the governor, 1 by the cities, 1 by special interest, and 1 other. And I'm assuming we must be the other here.
You are the other.
Okay,
Yep. So is this the reappointment then? I didn't
Yeah.
hear the first part.
Yeah,
I'm fine with it.
okay.
They are a good group. They work well together. so no.
Can you categorize overall, what kind of problems are done at the Boundary Review Board?
I have not been part of them.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Patrick is coming up to the rescue, though.
The biggest one and the most influential is if someone is when like Kalama wanted to annex a portion, the citizens rebuked it. That's where the hearing goes, is before them, so that they can take a non-biased approach to the boundary review, and it's not taking up your guys' time.
I got you.
It's a state requirement.
Do they do other things? It's mostly at that level.
I believe there's others that administrative things that they do with boundaries, but I'm not 100% sure on
It's
that.
more annexations though.
It's mostly annexations, yes.
Now, do they decide, is their decision an advice or a decision?
Advice, I think.
Is it? Because it's got governor appointees on it.
I'd have to
It-
look into that.
It's
Okay.
actually the way it reads and I got it back in my office. It's a Washington State Committee for counties. So they assign it.
Then
For
it's
our
their
county.
recommendation.
So I imagine
I'm thinking.
the
it's a
decision is probably made.
Their recommendation. I don't know. I'd have to look into that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But I was just curious if the city of Aardvark comes up and says, I want to annex this, it goes to the board. The board looks at it and the board says, yes. Does that annex happen, or do they have to advise the Board of County Commissioners, or who is it they advise?
I think that's just the first step.
And then they work with the different jurisdictions to move the application forward.
And they need a complete approval of all the jurisdictions?
I believe so.
Of the 2 that are affected.
Correct.
Okay, because I don't think the county has any, someone might say, I don't want to be annexed. Can the county stop that? And I don't think it can stop an annexation in general cases.
I only have experience with one, when Clark County stopped the whole Hazeldale Salmon Creek annexation.
Uh-huh.
So there are options. that was a pretty extreme option they chose on that one, but there are options that the commissioners can do.
Yeah.
And and the commissioners can voice their opinion on whether, because I know Longview had talked about doing some stuff out West Longview at one time. Commissioners made a statement or sent a letter and gave their opinion.
Hmm.
It's kind of it's a give and take.
Sounds good as long as the citizens involved in the area get, they'll say,
They do, and they're very heard. I know they were out in West Longview.
I know some people in Kalama, when Kalama
Yep.
went out to, got Crest Lake and all that in there. Going up to Meeker, there were people along Meeker that said, not interested.
Yeah, and then the most recent one was up off of China Garden. The neighboring citizens did not want to be surrounded on three sides. The neighborhood didn't, by city, they're in the county, and they actually, Boundary Review Board voted it down.
So they had no choice.
The citizens weren't part of it. The developer was not happy that he was not in the city or with all of his development.
So in the case of the Meeker Road one, the Boundary Review Board had a play in that, right?
I believe so. That was a port request on that one.
Yeah. Gee.
Okay. 10 minutes. Executive session. Potential litigation is what I have. We're good? Okay, we'll adjourn to executive session.
Ray Lee, you probably think that we go here and discuss things very seriously. You actually break out the champagne. That's the facts.
Stuff that can't be discussed on HR stuff. Most of the time, or that's probably some sort of legal issue.
Right? I want to be in Hawaii.
That's right, I forgot that. That's got a vent that goes all the way across. the Pacific.
Must be.
Thank you.
Thanks. Did you not pause? So we're ready to go?
Yep.
Well, we're back from executive session. No decisions were made. Anything else for miscellaneous?
I think for today, that's been enough.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, I don't see any hands. We will adjourn this and thank everybody for coming.
Thank you.